We are live, and welcome to the Hardcore Soft Skills podcast to the listeners out there. So, I am very excited to have this conversation today with Mr. Rich Sheridan, and it's I've had a lot of people who responded in terms of they were very excited about the interview as well. And I want to introduce our guest here, and he's an entrepreneur, business leader, and author, and is best known as the co-founder, CEO, and chief storyteller of Menlo Innovations, a software and IT consulting firm that has earned numerous awards, press coverage for the innovative solutions that we're going to talk about today on the podcast. Welcome, Rich, to Hardcore Soft Skills.
Thanks, Yadi. Great to be with you today.
And I'm very excited because of the fact that in your work you talk a lot about joy, and just thinking about having the books talked about joy. It's like being, just looking at the titles make me joyful. So, so I so I want to check with you first in terms of knowing a little bit about your background, and then we'll know more about the content of the books. But why did you pick a career in technology?
Yeah, I had a real good exposure to programming when I was just a kid, long time ago. And I was, my high school started offering computer programming for the first time when I was a freshman. And I tried it. I found I loved it. And I think within weeks I decided this is what I want to do the rest of my days. It felt like an artistic medium to me. Like I wasn't very good at painting or drawing or, musical instruments or anything like that. So this was my artistic canvas, was writing code, and I'm still doing it more than 50 years later. So I think I chose wisely.
That's wonderful that you were able at such a young age to know exactly what you wanted to do. That's, I guess, a great privilege or a blessing to be able to have that.
Absolutely. I know a lot of people struggle with that, and I didn't. And I know that was a blessing for sure.
And even adults, as finding our next careers as well. So now let's talk about your experience and what drove you to create Menlo Innovations. And just for those of the audience who may know, Menlo Innovations has a very specific way of working, which is all about centered and employee centered and customer centric as well. But what drove you to create that company?
Yeah, as excited as I was about the tech industry, and I was actually felt like I was pretty good at it, and I was recognized along the way for, the type of recognition you get in businesses where I was getting raises and promotions and stock options. Inside, I was kind of dying. I was like, I don't know if I can do this the rest of my days because I was seeing trouble everywhere. The trouble that anybody who's done, say, project management or software development knows about in the software industry, where we miss deadlines, we blow budgets, we deliver poor quality, we have unhappy users, unhappy customers, unhappy people doing the work. And kind of by my mid-30s, I was getting burned out. And I thought, I'm either going to figure out a better way or I'm going to get out entirely. And my inner optimist kicked in, and I said, you know what, Rich, you're stuck in a room full of manure. Keep digging. There's a pony in this room somewhere. There's a way out of this mess. And so my mission, sort of in those mid-30s years of my career, was I was going to find a better way of doing things. Eventually, I found it, and that's what we created inside of Menlo, was what we now refer to as the Menlo way of working. But it's still today pretty different than what most workplaces are like. And I know you've read the books, so you have a good sense of that. But there's a lot of things we do differently, and we focused our attention on a single word, the word joy, which is an unusual word in business.
Yeah, yeah. And what distinguishes what is the Menlo way of working? And I'm curious to know, how did you discover that in an environment where it's all about deadlines and pressure? So could you describe that way of working?
Yeah, so one thing, let's start with the joy word because it's an important starting place for this discussion. Joy has a very tangible meaning for us. We want to end human suffering in the workplace as it relates to technology, for the people who do the work, for the people who pay for the work, and for the people who use the work. And so for us, everything, when we talk about joy, it has this incredibly tangible definition. And that is, we want to deliver incredibly high quality work and delight the people, the end users who are going to one day use our work. We want them to say, I love this, what you created. You made my life better. For us, that's the very definition of joy, is in serving others with the work of our hearts, our hands, and our minds. So in order to do that, you had to look at everything we did. And we said, let's just look at everything and say, how do we build this team? How do they work every single day? What process are we going to use? And all the things I'm going to describe to you that we changed in order to get to that joyful outcome that we saw is encompassed in this thing we now refer to as the Menlo Way. So if you came to visit, and I know you want to do that someday, and we'd love to have you here. We did 3 tours yesterday. We had 40 students in here today learning from us. So we have visitors coming all the time, by the thousands every year. And when they walk in, they often, the first word out of their mouths is, wow, because they can feel palpable human energy in the room. Now, we are unusual. I can actually show you a little bit of it here. We're an in-person work environment. That is, that wasn't weird 5 years ago. Now it feels like we might be the last one on the planet. It's hard to tell. But we're in the office 5 days a week in a big open room, and it's pretty noisy because we pair our people together. All work here is done in pairs. 2 people, 1 computer, 1 keyboard, 1 mouse, sharing their ideas back and forth, sharing the keyboard and mouse back and forth, working at 1 computer all day long. Those pairs switch at least every 5 business days. The human energy that results from that construct alone, the conversation, the brainstorming, the problem solving, the arguments around what's the best way to solve this problem, generate all of this noise in the room because we're in conversation about work. There is a palpable human energy to that. They feel like they're never getting stuck because their pair partner's there to unstick them. They're sitting right next to their peers. There's no cubes or offices or walls or doors for where the work is done. I'm in a nice quiet room so we can have a quiet conversation. But by and large, I'm out in the room with everybody else. And so that one construct right there starts to set us apart. 2 people, 1 computer, in an office 5 days a week. The other part that really sets us apart, which goes to the heart of delighting the end users, is we invented a whole new kind of design practice that we call high-tech anthropology. And a lot of people ask us, why would you need anthropologists on a software team? And our answer is very simple. We're building things that one day are going to be used by humans. We should understand those humans the way an anthropologist would, by studying them in their native environment. Learn their vocabulary, their workflows, their goals as human beings. Let's design the software for them rather than trying to get them to think like we designed the software. Because most software is built by really smart engineers and it works really well for the engineers that built it, but it doesn't work for the rest of humanity. And we know this because people who in my industry have learned to call the people we serve stupid users. And then we write dummies books for those poor people. It doesn't have to be that way. You can literally write design software that works the way the users who are going to use it think. Yeah. It uses their words, their vocabulary. So putting those 2 pieces together with our pair programming model, we build really great software that works every single day without fanfare or emergency. And with our high-tech anthropologists, we design user experiences that people say, I love this software. Those 2 things alone, and there's a lot more to it. There's a lot of project management practices. There's a lot of HR practices that are very unusual. But those 2 are the real standout portions of the Menlo Way. And again, why did we do those that way? Because we had serious problems to solve in how software is typically built.
And that's fascinating. And it seems I'm curious to know more about the what conditions needed to exist there, because, for example, for the high tech anthropologist, and that's one of the questions that one of my colleagues in the product management community had at Martin does. Our curiosity for in the high tech anthropologist, to balance out those that empathy with the user, but also to be able to be kind of make sure the team understands that, hey, what you're designing is not working. So how do we balance those out, like removing that preconception of the stupid user, quote unquote, with the, hey, my product is awesome, it's the user problem? Is there some sort of soft skills training that take place to make sure that they build that empathy, or that they build that kind of giving the hard news to the engineering team?
Yeah, so one thing is our engineers have deep respect for the work of the anthropology team, and they understand the importance of getting them out into the world and studying the users. Because ultimately, I'll tell you this, I give talks around the world on this subject, and there is a universal truth among people who write software for a living. There is only one thing that brings joy to a programmer, and that is to see their work get out into the world and literally delight people so much that the people they serve, the end users of the software they built, come back and say, I love what you built. You made my life better because of the work you did. That's all programmers really want. Our engineers, our programmers understand that the high-tech anthropologists do the work that makes sure that happens. So there's a deep mutual respect between our design team, the high-tech anthropologists, and the programming team. There isn't like disdain. There isn't like, oh, I've got a better way. I don't know what you guys are thinking. It doesn't need to work that way. It should work like this. They're like, no, you went out into the world. You literally studied the people we're going to serve.
Yeah,
I'm going to pay attention to what you're telling us.
that's great. And also the part of the other element that you mentioned, which is that the pairing and working together, which in person as well. How do you they require some sort of either person that either could be happy in that culture, for of working together in an open environment, because some say, I want to keep my headphones, I don't want to be bothered by anybody. So how do you assess that what's the right person to work in that team?
Yeah, well, you can imagine if you're going to work this way, the standard interview process, which I used to use, which I sarcastically now describe as two people sitting across the table lying to each other for a couple of hours.
Uh-huh.
I'm a little cynical about the way I used to do things. We changed the interview process completely here because we knew the standard interview ways wouldn't work for this kind of environment. So what we do is we actually invite people in mass. We'll bring 30, 40, or 50 people in all at the same time for a mass interview. We pair them during the interview with another candidate, and then we give them the weirdest instructions you'll ever hear in an interview. Yada, your job is to get the person sitting next to you a second interview. Help your pair partner succeed. That's how we're going to judge whether you get to come in for a second interview or not. We're going to watch you work with another human being, another candidate who's competing for the same position you are. And of course, we're telling them their job is to help you succeed and get a second interview. And you can imagine brains are twisting in the wind. You're like, no, I want the second interview. Why am I helping her? It's like, because this is our culture. This is the way we work. We pair you for 20 minutes and we switch the pairs. You do it 3 times and we send you all home. We don't actually even ask any questions of you during the interview process. We're simply watching how you behave with other people. And then we're deciding based on the observed behaviors, who do we invite back in for a second interview? Second interview, you come in for a full day and we pay you. And you pair in the morning with one of our team members, you pair in the afternoon with another. You do real work on a real client project and we pay you. If that day works for all 3 people you paired with and you, then we invite you in for a paid 3-week trial. And now you're going to go through our process 40 hours a week for 3 weeks. By the time we get done with that process, you're either fully onboarded or you've pulled the ripcord and said, I can't work like this. And we just had that happen the other day. Somebody came in, seemed like a great candidate, and 2 days in, they're like, nope, this isn't for me. Think of what a benefit that is to both Menlo and that person to have directly experienced what does it feel like to work here. And they just said, I can't do this. This isn't for me. That's okay. There's nothing wrong with them, and there's nothing wrong with us. It's just not a good fit.
And how about for the folks, I guess, who work, so the people who may work remotely, may want to work remotely, this is not, will not be applicable to this scenario because you want to have the people working together, correct?
Yeah, so I'll give you just a few weeks ago, we did one of our big interviews. We
Yes.
sent out a note to people saying, hey, we're very clear. This is in-person work 5 days a week in our office in Ann Arbor, Michigan. We got 500 resumes.
Okay.
Now, anybody who said, what are they, crazy? In person? I don't want that. No, it can only be 2 days a week if it's, if it's anything. They're just not going to apply. We're just clear up front. This is what our expectations are. And the good news is anybody who needs that kind of environment, there's thousands of other companies that you can work for. It's just not us. That's not what we believe. It's not how we work. It's not what we have. Now, we do give all of our team members 10 elective work from home days per year that they can use however they want. They don't have to make an excuse. Why am I working from home? They just say, hey, today I'm working from home. But they only get 10 of those a year.
Yeah. How about for those of us who are not in your area or who may not be able to apply to your company? How can we create, either as managers or as team members, similar conditions to what you have at Menlo Innovations in terms, perhaps if not in person, but at least that empathy,
Yeah.
collaboration? Yeah.
Yeah, I think number one, be intentional about it. Choose your intention like we did and start deciding what changes might we need to make to our current processes to meet up with our intention. So we don't do these things I'm describing, whether it's high-tech anthropology or pairing in our work, in an open and collaborative work environment in person. We don't do those things simply because we picked one of them and said, this is what we're going to do. We pick them because they match our intention, which is to create great software that delights people. And could you do that in another way? Of course you could. There's lots of different ways to accomplish the same goal. But I would say to your audience, pick your intention and then start designing every element of your processes, including your HR processes, to meet your cultural intention. And when you start doing that, suddenly things become clearer to people. They become less ambiguous. People understand, why am I here? What's my goal? What am I trying to achieve? If the processes keep reminding you every day that this is what we're trying to achieve, suddenly you stop resisting, you stop questioning, you stop saying to yourself, I'm not sure why I'm here or what we're trying to do. It's just entirely clear. And your processes can reinforce that. So if you come here to Menlo and you see the way we work, just know that the reason we work the way we do is because we have found over 25 years that it produces the results we're trying to achieve. So we stick with it.
So having a clear goals, but also that culture, it's everything centered around the culture of the end user and ending the suffering, as you describe. It's very important to set those conditions to then drive things around it, because that's one of the things that we see, unfortunately, in many tech environments. It's all about like doing the work and the task and completing the task without stopping to ask, why is it that we're doing this? Who is it? Who benefits from that part? I think it's very important.
Well, I think of, and I had these experiences in my old life before Menlo, where you're doing something and you're like, why do we do it that way? If it doesn't work, or worse, you know how you do it, you even know why you do it, and you keep seeing the bad results, and you're like, gosh, shouldn't we try something different? And that's really what led me to discover all the ways of working that we now use. And, and I'll give you just a simple example. With pairing, one of the problems it solves is this idea of there's people on your team who are towers of knowledge, right? Everybody understands this. Like there's a person on your team who only knows one thing and nobody else knows what they know. And that thing they know is really important. And so they can't take vacations easily. They have to take their laptop with them. They're always checking into work, even when they're supposed to be with their family on vacation. And eventually that thing that felt like job security becomes a prison they can't escape from. They get cantankerous. They're working a lot of overtime because there's a lot of work to do in their area. They're getting tired, so they're making errors when they are tired, and then they're spending even more time trying to fix their errors. And it just becomes this downward spiral of morale, of quality, of customer service, all that kind of stuff. We didn't want that. So we paired people together. And by pairing them, the knowledge is already being shared with two people. Switching the pairs, now you're sharing the knowledge with 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 people. And now you don't have that singular dependence on one person. You're not burning them out. They're not working the midnight oil. They're not making mistakes. So again, that you can start to see how we think about intention. We want to create great software. How could we change our process to do that? And we saw that pairing assists with that effort.
Yeah, that's a great technique for that, to share the knowledge and make sure that everybody benefits from that. How about conflict? How is that navigated? And because it's not all working together harmoniously, so how
I
do
always say
what's
we
the
have
approach?
regular human beings working for us.
Yeah.
What we try and do, we talk about this. We bring books in like Crucial Conversations and the Arbinger Institute's books like Anatomy of Peace and Leadership and Self-Deception. We will take courses in some of these things to teach our teams the skills necessary for good human communication. And the good news is that can translate at home too. So you could potentially
Yes.
better husbands and wives and parents and children and all that kind of stuff, and neighbors. But so we take it seriously because we know we need to. Part of it too is that thing that happened during the interview where we're saying help the other person succeed. So we have this very clear cultural value that's called helping others succeed, and we start teaching at the moment of first contact. And you know what's amazing about people? When you start setting clear expectations, they can adapt to them. Now, again, when the natural conflict arises, the one thing the team talks about is let's make the conflict about the problem we're trying to solve and not about each other. Let's try not to make it personal. Now, sometimes it does get personal. We've actually taught our team in those circumstances to look at their pair partner and just ask a simple question. We always say, check in with the human before you check in with the problem. And say, Yadi, are you okay today?
Yeah.
And then listen to what they say. Because you might say, you know what, I'm really tired. Oh, what's going on? I was up all last night with my dog, sick all night. I'm really worried about him. It's getting kind of old. I've had him to the vet a couple of times, and it's just on my mind. So, you might say, I'm really sorry if that's spilling out over here. I just didn't get a lot of sleep last night. Wouldn't it have been neat to know that before I lit into you about some seemingly minor problem we had in the code we were writing? Or you might say, no, I'm doing fine. Why do you ask? I'm like, well, it seems like you're a little quiet today. And then you find out, oh, it was actually something I did. So maybe check in with yourself. Like, is there anything I did today that upset you? Right. And so we try and be humble about that. And we're not perfect at it. These, like I said, these are regular human beings. But by always practicing those little micro skills every now and then,
Yeah.
like the name of your podcast here,
Yeah.
hardcore soft skills, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So you take the deliberate effort, which is part of the message of this podcast, of training your people to be able to manage that. And I love that approach, of that simple approach of checking with the person first and then addressing the problem. That's a great approach.
And here's the other thing that's less obvious, but is so important. We get to practice these skills all day long. This isn't like the only time we come together is in the 1-hour meeting we have every Monday, and then we're all off in our own areas. We don't have to interact. We are literally interacting 8 hours a day. So all of those little skills that you have to build are being practiced every minute of every day. You do that often enough, you get pretty good at it.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And before we go, I want to ask in regards of AI and technology in the workplace. I mean, you are in a tech workplace and
Yep.
keeping that human connection. How have you integrated either use of AI, presuming they're having AI coworkers, quote unquote, or how is that integration at Menlo Innovations of AI?
Yeah, I mean, we're running a lot of experiments, probably like a lot of organizations are. We're trying new things out because it's an exciting new frontier for our team. They're getting to learn something new. That's something they always appreciate about Menlo is this idea that we're always sort of on the frontier of what's happening, and that's certainly true with AI as well. Uh, we tend not to get caught up in the hype cycle of AI, where it's it's the answer to all problems immediately. When people are suggesting we use AI, we ask them first, well, what problem are you trying to solve? And if the answer is, well, we need AI, it's like, well, that might be a solution to the problem, but let's make sure we understand the problem first.
Yeah.
Because AI may be a good solution to that problem, it may not be. And so by running experiments, trying new things, doing internal projects where we're experimenting with a lot of these things, we're starting to build our own muscles for knowing when AI is a good answer for a problem and it's not. And then we actually spend time reaching out to others in the world who can come in, talk to us about it. We just had a programmer in who's working for one of those companies that's kind of all AI all the time. And he got a chance to tell us what is his day like when every tool he uses is AI. And we really listen and see what can we learn from others along the way. So, stay tuned. It's still pretty early. AI isn't ready for prime time in all circumstances. We don't, like I said, we don't get caught up in the hype, but we take it all seriously because we know we are in a transformational moment in the software industry.
Indeed, indeed. And that approach of not getting swept away by the hype and defining, always going back to defining the problem effectively and then coming up with the solutions. So it seems you've applied a lot of those skills that we talk about on the podcast, that collaboration, conflict resolution, defining the problem, all those great things. And thank you for sharing your knowledge today with us. And what's the best way for people to get in touch with you?
Yeah, I'm very active on LinkedIn, so feel free to mention this podcast. Say, hey, Rich, I heard you on the Hardcore Soft Skills podcast. I'd love to get connected. I will just accept your invite immediately on that. And I try as hard as I can to keep up with all the messages I receive on LinkedIn. If you want to come visit, you can go on our website and look for tours on the website. And good news, if you live far away, we have virtual tours. We do 2 a month, so you can just click on a link and you're here. And then if you're ever in the Ann Arbor, Michigan area, you can just come in and visit on one of our public tours that we do every month.
And that's one my travel plans for the upcoming year. So, and if not, in the meantime, a virtual tour, I would love to join as well. So, thank you so much, Rich, for being on the podcast.